Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm here tonight with our co-host, Gail Burke, and our guest is Professor Michael Gendre. My name is George Binns. And would you put the slide up, please? What we were talking about tonight is Common Core and park testing. Right now, neither one is ready for prime time, and most likely they won't ever be. But that being said, everyone, I think, would agree that high national standards are a laudable goal, and that we must have a competitive position with the rest of the world. While it's not a problem with Massachusetts right now, there's still room for improvement on our current standards. Furthermore, to ensure that students, parents, and taxpayers are getting their money's worth, there needs to be standardized testing. And right now, the Organization of Economic Developed Countries has set the standard. And to that end, I believe that both MCAS and the park testing should be replaced by PISA, which stands for the Program for International Student Assessment. This is the test that's got everybody nervous and jerky because the United States showed up as 27th in mathematics, 17th in reading, and 20th in science compared to the other developed countries. And the neat thing about this test is you can't teach to the test because it's a secret test. They won't give it out. Another thing is I don't like the idea of high-stakes testing. It means you have to pass them to graduate. But I don't have a better idea. I think right now the standard is PISA, and that's the one we should be using for college admissions, and we should eliminate the SATs and the ACT while we're at it. So, where am I going wrong? Gail?
Well, I don't think you're going wrong, but there's been a lot of publicity about Common Core and park testing, but there are still a lot of people, in particular parents, who are unaware of what Common Core entails. Michael, would you like to give a brief history of how we got into Common Core and who exactly designed it?
Sure, Gail, I will do that. But I just wanted to address the question that George started off with, which is that it would be desirable to have a test that's essentially accepted by everyone and that gets the acceptance of teachers as well as students and future educators in higher ed. So segueing back to your question, how is it that we have such an issue with Common Core and park testing? The reason why, it's because it was conceived secretively, and the people who were involved in designing the standards met in Washington, D.C. under the direction of Dave Coleman, who went to Bill Gates, got money to start these consortium things, these private companies, and then they decided, among a group of restricted people, not open to the public, no records are available. They decided how American education was going to be completely reformed, K through 12 and beyond. You need to know that David Coleman has moved on from having designed and orchestrated the entire scheme of Common Core to redesigning the college acceptance.
So it was not designed by educators,
no.
As educators would have you believe.
Correct. It was absolutely not designed by educators. The only two educators that were asked to be part of the validation committee, that was Sandra Stotsky and James Milgram. Sandra Stotsky from Massachusetts. She designed she made the Massachusetts Education Reform Act of 1993 a reality, and the huge success that this had was in significant part owed to her. There were others, of course, and then Milgram from Stanford University. Both of these people were the only educators on the validation committee, and they both refused to sign off on the standard. So there were no educators really on that school committee, on that validation committee.
Okay, thank you. We always hear from the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the school committee about the rigorous curriculum. Would you comment on that?
Well, rigorous, it's not rigorous at all. I mean, if you have to sort of then benchmark the outcome of Common Core and PARC, which is aligned to Common Core. You have to benchmark this against international outcomes, and absolutely it's not aligned, because the outcome of Common Core and the PARC testing that comes with it is essentially to end up with students in math that are that end up with a weak algebra 2. Okay, it's not even calculus. Some schools can put it in, but basically, if you teach to the test and if you test to the standards, you would end up with just algebra 2, not calculus. So it does not prepare. I'm totally emphatic, having listened to Milgram and others, it does not prepare students for STEM careers. That's really a huge drawback. That's for math. Now for English, what they do, what Common Core does, it cuts about in half the readings, the classical American and English literature readings, which are challenging and which force kids and teachers to investigate the English language in all of its complexities and richness, and instead they plug in what is called informational text. Now it starts off with about 30% of those informational text in grade 6 and so on, but then when you get to grade 12, it's about 70%. So 70% of the texts that are read by and studied, more or less, you could say, by students are stuff that is, they will not remember it. It's not memorable, and it's not really challenging either. They can write about it, because that's the assignment that they usually have, to write and write and write, but they will not really gain a deep understanding of issues that are relevant to interpersonal relationships or drama or anything that the culture actually offers. So they're really fluff. In general, you could say they're fluffy texts. Now, I've noticed the change in the outcome of students that arrive at the college level where I teach. In the last 2 or 3 years, but especially 2 years, I've definitely noticed that students are less able to handle ideas. There are many more terms that they're not familiar with that you have to explain, like quid pro quo, like despotism, things that are pretty much that prior to this generation, you just didn't have to explain. The vast majority knew them. Now the vast majority don't know them. So that's where I see there's a big problem with Common Core. It is actually lowering the standards, the outcome, the achievement, the academic achievement of students at the end of high school, which means that college will have to lower its standards. And that's where Dave Coleman, the orchestrator, the architect of Common Core, has moved on to. It's to lower the standards of college admission.
Well, this is where I get back to this campaign of mine, that if the PISA test is going to be the international benchmark that everybody is graded against nationwide, then that ought to be the test. And there shouldn't be a half a dozen different ones, and working to bunches of different standards that get to be kind of arbitrary. And I think one of the problems that showed up is you sent around a Facebook page a while back that showed a math problem. Mm-hmm. And the student was asked, okay, Sally read 52 pages. I'm sorry, she read 52 pages on Monday. On Tuesday, she read 128 pages. And is 76 a good answer to how many pages more she read? And the student went out and did the arithmetic, subtracted, 52 from 128, got 76, and said, yeah, that's a good answer. And was downgraded by 1 point because, no, what you were supposed to do was say, well, 128 is mostly like 130, and 76 is 52 is more like 50, so you subtract the 2, and you get a difference of 80. So 76 is probably a good answer. Now, that's an important point in solving problems, to have some way to check that you got the right answer, an independent test. That's the point that got missed in this particular lesson. The student didn't pick up on the code words of, is that approximately a good answer? And I think this is where the whole system is coming apart, in that they're making too many changes, and the standard curriculum doesn't account for them. The training the teachers went through doesn't account for them, and everybody's trying to learn at once, and there's going to be problems. And I think one of the big problems that showed up when we had the superintendent and the assistant on here, that we were supposed to get the results from the park testing very, very quickly. Well, we did a practice test here in Beverly this past spring. They still don't have the answers back yet. So what's quickly about that? So if you don't get the answers back, what's the value of the test?
Well, and that was one of the key reasons that members of the school committee gave for voting for park testing, because they would have the answers by the beginning of the school year, so they would be able to use them. Well, here we are in late October, and we still don't have them.
Right.
Well, if
Can I
you're
comment
thinking
on-
about that, really, the test ought to be given within the first month of the school year, and the answers ought to be back by Thanksgiving. So the teacher that gives the test has the students, has the results, and can adjust the program for the rest of the year to correct for difficulties and shortcomings.
Right.
If it was something that was done last year and over the summer the students changed, you don't know where you're starting from.
Right. Well, I'd like to make a few comments. Number one, the example you gave is essentially, I think, correct in terms of how you remembered things. What I would just add is the fact that when you give a math problem, math question, essentially there is one right answer. There's not a good answer. There's just one right answer and plenty of wrong answers.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay, so even the wording already is completely misleading or is wrong to begin with. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I think what people complain about is the fact that half of the grade in those math exercises and tests in Common Core and Park is that there is English involved, okay, which means that students have to write, longhand write or actually type what it is that they're doing. Now, that is the waste of time for a student that is that gets to the answer. He or she gets the answer, and that's they should be tested on whether the answer is right or wrong, or if they're on the way but not but slightly off by something somewhat understandable, then they'd still get some points for that. But that's absolutely not the case right now. So, for example, this Common Core concept of testing the English or having an English component to math is hurtful to minorities who don't speak English at home, because they might just do the math correctly, but then they're going to be penalized because they don't write the English correctly. Right? So this is just a total absurdity of the Common Core.
Well, this is part of the problem of, we look at the PISA results and we see that countries like Japan and Finland and Germany are doing better. Well, what are they doing different? When they find out that in those countries they have a different culture, and as a result they teach mathematics differently, a much stronger emphasis on deriving solutions. And this is something that you used to get in geometry, where you'd have to go through all the proofs. Well, as you point out, in algebra or plain arithmetic, there is more emphasis on getting the right answer. And if you got the procedure down correctly, then the right answer falls out of it. And explaining how you did it, that's nice to do, but that just takes time. And I'm not sure that, as you point out, that articulating that in English is really advancing your skills in mathematics.
And in the real world, it's necessary to get the correct answers rather
Right.
than how you came about.
But I also want to address the PISA idea that George had. It seems to me this would be a good benchmark for different states to adopt, but I am not so sure that just sort of introducing PISA as the graduation or as some sort of requirement is exactly the right way. I would just say this: there are two states that are doing very well in math, as you probably know, and that's California and Massachusetts. Now, the reason why California has done very well is because of James Milgram. So I think our viewers should look him up. James Milgram.
Well, what's he doing in California that's different than what we're doing?
Well, he actually had to pick up from the pieces of a reform that was devastating in 93. I forget exactly what year that was. And he rebuilt it. He knew it was terrible. And that reform is pretty much the reform that Common Core does to math nationwide. So people should research James Milgram and his pulling out of the catastrophe of a reform of math in California. So that's number one. Now in Massachusetts also we've done very well with math. So I think other states should emulate Massachusetts and California, and then you'd have collaborative efforts on the part of teachers within school districts or statewide, and then maybe higher ed, community colleges and universities, sort of pulling their people together and making them part of an ongoing improvement of education. And that's what the petition really leads to. It leads to ending Common Core in Massachusetts and bringing back MCAS, revisiting MCAS, and then allowing educators of high school or throughout the K through 12, as well as educators in higher ed to improve our standards. And this is how we got here. We got to be number one in Massachusetts, and this is how others should be doing too.
You get into a mixed bag there because the Common Core is a set of standards that got built into the Massachusetts framework. We're getting smarter on jargon every time. And the claims are made that the Massachusetts framework is as good as it ever was, if not better. Okay, not having seen it.
Who made that claim, that the standards are...
Oh, the superintendent.
Well, right.
Whatever, yeah.
But he did make it.
He did make it. Oh, okay.
And...
did you ask him about this? Drop here? Okay, never mind.
That's a different story. Yeah.
Well, no, not quite.
And at the same time, he pointed out, and I think it's reasonable to say, that MCAS has been around for a long time, so it needs some work. Yeah. And whether Park is the right way to go, don't know. There was an article written in the Salem paper, I pointed out to you a while back, by a special ed teacher who found that the Park test has some good features, that it's computerized and it's very quick. It's a limited time test. You get it done and over with.
But you don't get the answers immediately.
That's another problem.
Well, that's a huge problem, right?
Well, okay. But you don't get the answers from MCAS that quick either. It's just
but not as long, okay.
Well, one of the
neither
problems,
one is good, so longer is just both bad.
One of the things that you pointed out, you have seen a drop in what your students are doing.
Yes, I have.
And Common Core has only been in the schools about
5 years.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
4 years full.
So I can see where the college level are going to get worse.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Many of these kids that you have didn't have Common Core at the very beginning.
That is
but
correct.
the kids that have had it
That
from
is
the very
correct.
beginning are really going to be in trouble.
And that's why we need to stop it.
Yeah.
But I want to address an issue that George brought up. The MCAS that we've had for the last 5 years have been aligned, the testing, has been aligned to Common Core. Because the state...
MCAS.
Yes. Common Core was adopted in the middle of the summer when no one was really paying attention. And there was a vote of 12 people, no consultation with the legislators, nothing, just essentially secretively.
It's the Board of Education.
Yeah. And once that was adopted, they gradually aligned the MCAS testing to Common Core. So the only difference essentially now between MCAS and PARC is that MCAS is a state, has been voted on by our state legislature. In other words, it can be revisited and upgraded. Whereas if we go to PARC and Common Core, okay, if we go to Common Core and we lock it in, then we're absolutely finished. We cannot revisit our standards. We've adopted national standards. That's the big problem. So what we need to do is pull out completely out of Common Core and PARC and bring back MCAS pre-2010 and then upgrade with the criteria I was just mentioning before, namely having higher ed and high schools and middle school teachers collaboratively work to improve those standards and upgrade them periodically.
And I think one of the problems that we haven't addressed yet is Charles Krauthammer brought this up on Fox News one night, that he is concerned that the way Common Core is going, it's going to be biased in favor of somebody's agenda. Yep. And he was talking about it from the point you were making about the kind of readings that they're doing. Mm-hmm. Which ones are selected to be current informational stuff?
Right.
What kind of information you're passing on?
Right.
Is it a broad spectrum?
Absolutely
from
not.
Way left to way right?
Not at
or
all.
Is it concentrated one place or the other? Now, not having seen that, I can't judge it. I did, however, see some of the stuff being done on the new generation science standards that are going around. And there was one in there that caught my eye, and I tried to bring this up when we had the superintendent, that they were saying that, okay, the students ought to be able to work with math models and be able to take the weather models and project what's happening to the weather and the climate. Well, that sounds nice until you find out that weather models and climate models are notoriously chaotic. Mm-hmm. And the example I used before is, you look at Hurricane Sandy. That's coming up the coast. 6 of the models projected it's going to go out to sea and everybody's humping. The European model says it's going to make a left turn into Atlantic City, and it did. Okay. Yeah. Comes the big snowstorm from last year, and they say, oh, wonder where it's going. Well, the European model predicted the right answer last time. Maybe we ought to use that one. They used it. It got the wrong answer. So these models are notorious for their sensitivity to the input. Mm-hmm. And this is a lesson that you don't normally teach 7th and 8th grade pre-algebra and algebra. So somebody's building in an agenda of global warming, climate control, and all this good stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's very subtle.
Well, not so subtle, but yeah, but it is there, right?
One of the most important things that I think parents should know about, and it is mind-boggling, because the data that's being collected from the children, personal data, is being collected without their even knowing it, and certainly without parents' permission. Right. And this data is being shared with other government agencies covering everything from children's mental health to their history of child welfare placements and their involvement in the juvenile justice system. So all those records are being shared.
Not only that, shared internally with it, but sold. Sold. That's very scary.
That's an invasion of privacy.
Well, to begin with, it is, but then to make money off of it, I mean, come on, this is just crazy. No, I really, there's so many issues. It's really something that parents need to be educated about. I think you have done quite a bit here to educate parents. I have tried my best to bring the people who can speak about Common Core to address issues here in Beverly. We had, as you recall, an informational meeting in February when there was still plenty of snow on the ground. You were there, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we can do more, and we have to do more. And with this petition, I think and this book that just came out from the Pioneer Institute, Drilling Through the Core, which I highly recommend to people, educators and parents who want to understand a little more about the core and why it's bad for American education. This is the subtitle to Drilling to the Core
Well,
from
Michael,
Pioneer Institute.
we're getting close to the end, so would you like to explain to everybody what the petition is that you're talking about and how people can help you?
Right. So the bottom line is, as you probably understand from my little explanations, is the fact that we don't need Common Core in Massachusetts. We just need to revert to our MCAS and upgrade it. We absolutely need to upgrade it. So first of all, we need to end Common Core. And there is a petition that will be on the ballot in 2016. We are collecting signatures. We're, fairly well along the way, but we still need to have as many signatures as possible. So, for example, in front of Shaw's, I was standing this past weekend, and so were you, actually, right? And so it's just to sign the petition, to have the address, and then it's going to be certified, City Hall. And so we ask for parents and everyone, taxpayers, everyone, to come and sign this petition at Shaw's.
And you need to collect 100,000 signatures, right?
So we need to collect 100,000 signatures because
That's statewide.
Statewide, yeah, statewide.
Not from Beverly.
No. We need 65,000 certified. So we're shooting for 100,000 raw signatures.
Yeah.
Because that's number one.
By November 18th.
By November 18th, they have to be in, yes. And also, since you allowed me to do a plug for End Common Core Massachusetts, I also want to point out that there is an internship opportunity for students, okay? So students in Beverly and around, they can come and help and get an internship, which essentially is for them to help collect the signatures, yes. Also drive to the various town halls like Wenham and Danvers, where we get people from Danvers that sign. We have to go and bring those signatures, those sheets there. Then maybe make a few phone calls and operate the social media. Now, the benefits from doing this for students in Beverly, high school students or whatever, private school students, reference letter, potential community service hours. You also, obviously, they can add something onto their resume. College application also are appreciative of this experience in the democratic process and meeting very interesting people. It's a very interesting process. There are a few diehard, very few actually, supporters of Common Core. The vast majority are horrified by what they know of it, and generally it's correct what they think of it. So please, parents and grandparents, tell your children and grandchildren to contact me, and I hope that I asked Kim to plug in my phone number, so people will probably see my phone number on their screens.
Okay. And it's a great way for citizens to participate in the election process,
Yeah.
and particularly with these initiative petitions.
Right. Yeah. It's a very good experience that kids can have.
Mm-hmm.
It just opens up a lot of doors, and it makes them think about how democracy works in America.
Well, Michael, we want to thank you, from both of us, for being on the show, for informing us and the public about what's going on with Common Core, and we hope that you'll be willing to come back and give us updates.
I will indeed.
And thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon, next week probably, and we hope that you will watch us, and good night.